Hey everyone, I'm Pierre Mancuso.
And I'm Brian Koch.
And this is Countdown to Coco, where the points don't matter.
What? Okay.
It's like Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, I see. Whose line is it?
I'm trying to do a different version of the opening. Anyway, this is the show where we watch and discuss every single Pixar theatrically released film in preparation of their 19th feature film, The Coco. Which comes out later this year in November. And today, this is our 8th episode?
I believe so.
Right? It's starting to get a little foggy now.
Yeah.
And we went... This is a special occasion.
Yes, a special episode.
This is a special episode because...
Not special for you, but special for us.
Special for us, yeah. It's functionally the same kind of episode, but for us, this whole time, for the first 7 films, we've been watching them on our beautiful 4K TV, which is very nice. But this time, we had the opportunity to see the 8th film, which I'll say in a second.
Oh, okay.
In New York City in 35 millimeter. Yes. They actually shot the film.
On 35 millimeter?
On film.
So this was the original print?
Yes. The on-set print.
The on-set print.
Of one of the most, I think, divisive Pixar films. Because I think you hear a lot of things.
Statement.
It's one of the best titles. It's The Ratatouille.
Yeah.
And
which is Pixar confirmed, because there was a Q&A after with some of the animators, and they specifically called it The Ratatouille.
Yeah.
So we finally feel that our little joke that, like, it's not really clear, like, what exactly about it is funny, but it's been validated.
Yeah, I think it was also part of a language barrier. I don't think she spoke English, but I don't think English was her first language. But
well, you know what? It's a barrier that, like, she carved a gateway through, and we
but yeah, like I said, we had the opportunity to see in 35 millimeter, and
a 10th anniversary screening.
And the reason why it was at the School of Visual Arts Theater. If you guys are ever in New York City, and you get the chance to go. It was very cool.
Apparently, they have these kind of screenings a fair amount of time.
They have,
and they said they want to do one for Incredibles 2 next year and have Michael Giacchino come by.
Because I guess Michael Giacchino went to the School of Visual Arts.
I believe so. Yes.
They wanted him to come today, but he couldn't, and Brian was very upset.
Yeah.
But they had alumni come back. That's why they showed that there were some animators there who did a Q&A. Mm-hmm. But gorgeous. So let's just talk about that, I guess, for just a bit.
Because I think it is relevant to the... Like, of all films to have shown on film, like, of Pixar's films, this one makes a lot of sense, actually. Because the more and more I watch it as I get older, the more I realize that it is kind of indirectly talking about film, or at the very least, artistic expression.
Yes. So, very much so. Yeah.
Very, very much so. And it's really interesting to sort of then see kind of some of the ideals they're putting out there. But is there anything else you wanted to say specifically about it?
Well, no, I think going off of that, not only is it about film,
yeah,
but also, like, because it is set in France, like, it's very like that. Like, it makes sense if you're seeing it in film. Like, a French New Wave, like, Francois Truffaut, like, so it lends itself this kind of, like,
there even has a funny part
sophistication kind of in terms of the way it's presented.
When Linguini and Remy are falling asleep and they have like a black and white film on the TV. So it's like Pixar like making like a quote unquote live action film, like just for like a scene on the TV. I never really had thought about that before. I was like, oh, that's pretty funny.
And when we say it was on film, like, this was not necessarily a clean print. Like, there was a little bit of scratches on the opening titles.
They warned us it was a little dirty.
But it was really charming, though. I really liked, like...
Rats are dirty, too, so...
it makes sense. Yeah. Not dirty. It was just more like scuff marks or whatever. But it gives, like, that older feel. It was really cool. It was really, really cool. Mm-hmm. But, so let's just talk about this movie. So, because the production history... I think is important to talk about. Not only is it interesting, but I think it's important because it has a bearing on the film.
And it's the first time that this sort of thing happened at the studio.
It would not be the last.
Yeah, no, it would not be the last. But yeah, the first time there was sort of like a shuffle in terms of directors.
So why don't you explain for those who don't know?
Well, basically, from what I've heard is that originally what I thought was that there was going to be like one director on this film that wasn't Brad Bird, and it ended up not like that. But I think originally, like I forget how to say it. Is it Han Pinkava or I apologize not being able to like pronounce the way it is. I just see it written.
Who is that?
But that was the original quote unquote director of the film. I don't know if he was ever necessarily supposed to like actually direct it, but he like came up with the idea, brought it to the table. He was the one sort of like overseeing it up until the, and I think like as I just learned from when the animators were talking about it, they even tried to like hand it over to Bob Peterson at one point, and that wasn't really working. Then they gave it to Brad Bird, and what they said was, which I'm not sure necessarily how accurate this is, but like, God, apparently they love finishing films in 8 months that were in trouble, because same with Toy Story 2, which I guess they reworked in 8 months. They said that Brad Bird had 8 months in production, which I'm not necessarily sure if that's exactly.
This was like 2 for the amount of work that they're supposedly saying he like rehauled, because he rehauled a lot of it.
Yes, he did.
Because he's credited as a writer and director, very much like Incredibles.
Yes,
but I wonder how much of the original story was there, because there's some issues with the script, but I have to think everything I know about it that it was like all the problems with this movie in terms of like maybe its structure or the way the characters are when I say design, I don't mean like the look, but I mean like the way like they're written. I feel like comes from just like the inherent nature of whatever story was there. And if Brad Bird had been given this from the start, maybe it would have been, those problems wouldn't have been issues. Right.
Well, one thing that they reiterated at the Q&A, which I've heard before, which is sort of like the biggest thing that I've heard that like Brad Bird sort of changed, is what was done with Gusteau. In the original version of the film, Gusteau was actually like a principal character. And he was alive. Okay. Alive. And he was like still there. And they still sort of had like the corporatization of Gusteau's, and Skinner was trying to be like, oh, the microwave burritos. Gusteau didn't really like that, but it was like, that's the way like we gotta like, stay in business and such. And Bird was like, no, we're killing Gusteau. So, and I think that's an extremely inspired choice, because I love what they do with like sort of like him as like the figment of Remy's imagination. He's almost like this sort of like Obi-Wan type apparition, but like the one that's made very clear is just an extension of Remy's psyche. It's not like this supernatural thing. It's just, it only knows whatever he would know. And it's really interesting and gives this movie it feels very, again, the way The Incredibles kind of changed the game. Like this movie doesn't feel like any of the other Pixar movies. Yeah. Before or after. It feels very singular, which I think kind of, if you like it or don't like. I think people like it for that reason. I think people don't like it for that reason. It feels a bit indie once you get like...
It really does. Yeah. It really
once
does.
You get into like, we're in the kitchen, we're at Gusteau's, like... It's like a romantic comedy, like a little bit. Like,
very true to life. Like, it's very like we talk about the our world intersecting with like a more fantastical world. Yeah. This is really more about like one particular fantastical element, which isn't really, it's just more of like a sentient rat.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing that's that ludicrous. I mean, you do have the whole family, but they're not really play.
It's a little bit of flair to our world as we recognize.
Yeah, like I almost wish they made more Pixar movies like this, which is really about like normal people doing normal things. Because there's this whole thing of like, they always try to do it through a lens. Like, we're gonna talk about this very relatable thing, but through this lens of a toy or a fish, and of course not to bag on those movies, but I think there's something to be said and commended that this movie isn't like through. Aside from Remy, which is the focus, I don't want to overplay.
Of course,
but making a movie just about humans, being humans, I think that's super cool.
Yeah,
for better or for worse. But yeah, this idea of it being kind of like an indie film.
Yeah,
I think is really that comment's really well taken in the sense like. Yeah. It feels very much like a foreign film in a lot of ways.
It does,
and maybe that's just the score.
And the score.
Let's jump around. It was such a good score.
Michael Giacchino. Yeah. No, excellent score.
I don't want to say better than The Incredibles score, but like,
well,
I don't know. I mean,
I may or may not have used a sampling of this score for an acclaimed short film that I made while at NYU that you starred in.
I did star in it.
That's so right. Like to complete the sort of self-congratulatory pat on the back. There wasn't any point I was making there other than
just to bring it up.
No, but like, yeah, that's just like, I'm just saying that in lieu of like reiterating it's an amazing score that I could listen to so many times. I love like the paper chase, of course I really love the dinner rush, the Le Festine, which they got Camille, who's like this French.
Is that the song with the woman?
Yeah, the
one they end the movie.
Yeah, I don't know too much about her other than that I know they also brought her on to The Little Prince, and she did like some musical stylings for that.
That's a French film. That's a French book.
Right. So yeah, no, she's great. Yeah, no, like absolutely fantastic score. And what's nice is that I don't know to what degree she collaborated with Giacchino, but like they plant the whole theme of Le Festine, which is like sort of the main like into like the Ratatouille theme. So it's interesting to sort of see like that is all like sort of like coming together like that. But yeah, I guess then let's like talk more about like just like the story and like thematically what this movie's really discussing, because I think like much like The Incredibles, there's a lot going on under the surface.
So I want to touch on this. So the little backstory. I think I told you this story that I didn't see this in theaters because I went. It was the summer of 2007. And me and my friend and my mom went, and literally it was almost like it was out of a movie. Mm-hmm. We walked in, and then over the loudspeaker they went, "The 5 o'clock showing Ratatouille is sold out," or whatever the time was, and we just went, "Oh, okay," and we just went home. Yeah. And I never saw it in theaters. And I think I didn't see it until it was on ABC Family, because I don't know if they still do this now, like when it's freeform. But back when I was like in middle school and high school, ABC Family, that and Harry Potter, Pixar movie, they would just play these movies to death. And I don't think I ever watched it all the way through from start to finish, but I kind of would watch it while doing some other things in the background, like kind of looking like, oh, this is kind of funny. And then I watched it when I was, I think, 16. Yeah. I was in the hospital. I had back surgery because I have scoliosis. And I watched it in the middle of the night. I was having this bad night. So I think it was just the perfect storm of that, and also the point in my life where I was really starting to get into writing and directing. Yeah. It was like the perfect thing, because really the movie boils down to Ego's monologue at the end. Yes. That's kind of the thesis statement of the film. Yes. And to condense it, he basically says, Augusto said anyone can cook, and I never really agreed with him, but now I know what he meant. I know that what he meant by it. Not everyone can cook.
Not everyone can be a great
not everyone can be a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere. And this idea that it doesn't, maybe you don't have the skills there, but don't discount your ability to be a great artist just because like where you come from. No. Within the movie, it's very specific. He's like a rat. Yeah. But like this idea of like, you can't be a great painter because you're from Minnesota. And like no one ever has been, or you can't be a great basketball player because you don't. Do you know what I mean? Like, like these kind of things, like the idea of, not limiting yourself. The only limit, I think there's like a line. The only limit is your own, like imagination and will. Yeah. So super fascinating. Thing. I don't know if anybody else want to add to that.
I mean that reminds me of the first time I saw this film, which was also a sort of unique experience, in that I saw an early screening, which was we just had like in our local newspaper in the Newsday, they said like, oh, they were going to be showing, and it was at like our theater that we frequent, which is the United Artists Westbury Stadium on Long Island. And they said, like, I think this was about like a month before like the movie would have come out. So I was like, oh my god, like of course, like I want to go see Ratatouille that early. Wow. So we went in and they gave out like these sort of like suggestion like flyer things, like for like like because it's an early screening, they want to like get an idea of what people's reactions are to the film.
Would they have changed things? Like was this like the point in the movie where their stage of production where they would have changed things?
I really don't think they would have actually changed anything. I guess maybe this was more just like to sort of like track how they should market it, or like maybe get an idea, like project how it's gonna do. I don't know, because I think at this like I remember keeping a keen eye out for when I saw it later to see if maybe they changed anything, but I don't think they changed anything that I could have recalled. Yeah. But basically what happened was one of the questions was what made you interested in this film, what about it got your attention, and one of the options that you could check was because it's from John Lasseter, the director of The Incredibles. And I'm like, and at this point I'm like 10 years old, and I'm like, oh no, he wasn't the director of this. That's Brad Bird who directed, and he directed this. So I was like telling my parents, they were like, oh, you have to go tell the guy who's like collecting the
who doesn't care. He's not from Pixar. Yeah. He just works at the movie theater.
So like I went up to him and like said like, this is there's a mistake. Like it says it credits John Lasseter with The Incredibles and this film, and it should be Brad Bird. And they were like, oh, okay. Like they were like really like both impressed and annoyed, like probably. Confused. No, I don't think they were annoyed. I think they were charmed. Okay. But
and how did this influence the way you saw it? Because my example gave insight onto why I like this film. How did that influence your?
If you don't cut me off, maybe I'll tell you. Well, because when we were watching it again today, right, in a theater for the first time since 10 years ago. And I then kind of almost had this moment of like everyone's like kind of like laughing at the same point, because I remember seeing this in theaters. It sort of in a way made me feel like Anton Ego himself at the end of the film, and then he has like that flashback to when he's in his childhood.
Oh,
and in his band. Because then it's this whole sort of idea of like, yes, like in a sense I'm enjoying the same thing, but I feel like I was having like a different experience with it because I was engaging with it on a different level. So I think this gets at this sort of idea of how like with what Anton Ego, when he has something that, even though it reminds him of his childhood and of home and of the past, it's still new. which is a really sort of an interesting sort of then thought on what I was able to like sort of then catch on to as like the thread through this movie that I was like, wow, I never really sort of like analyzed it this way before. But this idea of how like creating something unique is so like integral to the story of Ratatouille, specifically in the sense of like I feel like there's almost like allegories going on of like this idea of because I asked myself, okay, like I see sort of what they're going for with that, like, you know, like Remy, like rat doesn't belong in the kitchen, okay, I get all of that. What is supposed to be sort of like the real life equivalent to like he's stealing? Like how does an artist relate to stealing? And I realized, oh, it's like stealing as in like using conventions and using what was relied upon before could be one way to interpret it.
Oh, okay.
And when I was looking at it through that lens, I was like, okay, this is really then sort of interesting. Because there's also then this whole idea that I think this is a very, very funny exchange that speaks to what Brad Bird sort of then values in terms of his artistry. When Colette is talking about how Gusteau was always trying to be unexpected.
It's our job.
But it's no, it was his job to be unexpected. Okay. It's our job to follow the recipe.
Yeah.
So, and I think that then that can then say a lot in terms of like how then Pixar then sort of reminding me of when they brought him on for Incredibles. Like they have like this lineage of success, and he might then just want to like repeat that and try to like follow that formula as much as you can. But you need to then continue being unexpected in order to continue that lineage. So it's this sort of like interesting dance.
You have to continue something, which implies a maintaining.
Yes.
You have to keep reinventing yourself.
Right. And if
that's fascinating.
Yes, and if you do so, then you are going to then be able to, for like the viewer or whoever's then enjoying your entertainment or dish or whatever, you will incite in them the feeling of what they had before. But it will be a new feeling, and that's what you get with Ego at the end. So yeah. When I was watching it through that lens, I realized, wow, there's really then a lot and also just this whole idea of how then in Remy's life, there's like people who don't have the same level of like sort of like admiration and passion for his art. Like I love the scene when like he's trying to show a meal, like okay, like you know, like would take the two.
I love representing the color with the
with like the music. Yeah, no, that's.
I wish they did that more. I wish that played into it more. The kitchen actually, like when he's actually like in the kitchen cooking.
Well, that would be really interesting.
Particularly at the very end. Particularly that'd be really cool.
I just wish they did stuff like that, like in general, even more.
Like more abstract.
Yeah. Because that was really cool, and it captured this sense of like heightened passion that then like that Remy has, and then he's trying to instill in a meal, and he's still like. I don't really get it, but like it was interesting. Like how relatable is that for you know what I would affectionately call douchebags like us, who then like you know watch films like and then we try to then talk about it with you know
like a layperson,
a commoner, you know, like a
peasant,
a peasant, yeah, a paisan, and they're just like I thought it was good. Like my favorite part was that, and then we're still talking about it for more than 5 minutes, and they're like, "Geez, I'm over that movie already." But we're like, movie!
We're talking about it for like 3 hours.
We're talking about it 10 years after the dang thing came out.
Yeah.
So we're really like, we have problems.
And also I think it was a great way because I think out of all like the art forms, like if you, I don't want to step on anyone's toes here, but I think like culinary arts, like that's something that doesn't, like, people who don't understand filmmaking can still understand that there's like artistic films, but for a lot of people, myself included, it's like food is fuel. It should taste good, but like the food I eat is probably the equivalent of like crappy summer blockbuster. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, and there are people who like I never understood this with fancy restaurants, and it shows in this movie. Like the portions are so small. I'm like, I'm still gonna be. You're gonna spend $50-$60 on I could get like 15 cheeseburgers for the price of that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so, and it's trying to explain to both, not only a meal, but to the audience, like, what is, like, what is it like, trying to explain the beauty of food.
Right.
Or taste. Right. The beauty of taste. And I wonder how much Brad Bird has an experience. Well, because he was brought onto this, so I guess he didn't have so it's almost him trying to also find those answers on screen. Yeah,
absolutely.
Because I'm sure he came in and was like, I don't care about fine dining probably, so he has to kind of as an artist figure out like why does he care, and you see it on screen him like trying to wrestle with that.
And also this notion of both, you could say, continuing legacy and or maintaining legacy. I feel like, which is of course so like intrinsic to this notion of Gusteau's like still open after like he has died, and like the people who are trying to keep up.
And they're just basically copying his recipe.
Yeah. And another sort of interesting examination of that is in which we have Remy and Linguini working together, and it's sort of this partnership between two individuals who like have like different skill sets, or one could say different aspirations, but they're trying to like unite as one. And is that like possible? Is that like sort of then so it's this then idea. This movie's really wrestling with different visions sort of coalescing and trying to like find a harmony.
Yeah.
And be able to like, okay, then we're gonna we'll stick to the recipe, or maybe then I'm gonna change it a little bit. Oh, it's something new. So yeah, really then just sort of interesting like meditations on like creativity and originality and adherence to formula, as it were.
Going off something just very specific you brought up, I think I think we should have a big section on like what doesn't work in the film.
I think so too.
But one of the things this doesn't have to be the beginning of that conversation, but something you brought up specifically about like these two people coming together.
Yes.
I wish like I don't know what it would be, and this might just be a problem with the way it's structured. And Bradford had nothing to do. He was stuck.
Yeah.
I wish that Linguini had more to offer. Basically, it's a partnership, but it's really more like Remy's doing everything, and Linguini's just the body.
Yeah,
because it would make Linguini.
They even like lampshade that a little bit, because he's like, I have the ability to appear human.
yeah. And that's the kind of thing is like his build up of his ego, no pun intended.
Yeah,
like of his ego. It kinda is a little unsubstantiated. Like not just like character, you shouldn't be doing that. More like writer, you shouldn't have written him that way.
I agree. That's a big problem that I have. The fact that Linguini and like he admits it later, like that he wouldn't have been anywhere without Remy and his ability to cook. But like really, like he is bringing absolutely nothing to the table whatsoever. And like he then is on like a little motorbike ride with Colette. And then Remy just like flies off into the street, almost gets killed. That like end of your career, end of your new life, right there. Linguini.
Yeah, so
totally careless. Like he didn't even like get off and try to like run back and help. Like.
So I don't
know.
So that's a big problem with it. And but then again,
and I think that also hinders their big like end of Act 2 argument a bit as well, which is something that I feel like a lot of movies.
I trusted you. It's like you threw me off of a moving car, a moving moped.
But even like sans that, it's still like, oh, like sorry, like you're like reaping the rewards of like this business and everything. I'm trying to feed my family. My God, like, and I wouldn't have even like done it to this extent if you weren't being such a jerk earlier. So
it almost feels like Brad Bird received an outline for the film.
Yeah.
And then there was a script, but he just went back to the outline and went, I'm stuck with this outline. We don't have time to rewrite the structure, but I'm just going to write the scenes, each of those scenes really, really well.
You know what maybe should have happened instead? Maybe Remy should have been then more like big for his britches than Linguini. Because it is really interesting once he does like fall off the motorbike.
The issue is that you can't talk to each other.
Right. Well, I'll get into that later because that's something I think that's really important to touch on. But yeah, when he does like fall off the motorbike and he's in the street, that comes at a really like pivotal moment in that I feel like Remy really then does feel like he's then such a success like in this sort of world, and that brings him back down to size quite literally with like a rat, disgusting little creatures, back into the sewer, people trying to like kill him again. That is really then sort of interesting. But yeah, like I think it would have then made more sense and been more like tied more towards into the main character's arc if it was him, and it would be more earned if like he then had like a bit of an ego trip. But yeah, that's
another thing is like the whole philosophical element besides the artistry thing, but like this whole philosophical conjecture that the father kind of presents his character, like kind of the function of that character is to show this ideology of humans want to kill you, but it never really pays off in an interesting way.
It's fairly easily dismissed because in that very same scene, Remy like just sort of is like no and walks away,
and then I guess it's refuted. And I don't mean like we want to see it refuted, like that ideology is wrong, and then we want to see it. But I guess it's not really made a big thing. I guess it's because Colette doesn't leave, or Linguini protects him from the rest of the people. Yeah. But it's not as satisfying as I wish it were.
Well, because this is another thing. The Rat family, like particularly Django the dad, and just everything about they're not in it too much, but like when they are, it's sort of weird in the sense of like, I feel like when we're watching those scenes, we're meant to feel that it's more significant, but since they're in so little of it, like there's not that much of an impact, and like while Remy is away from them, it's not like, oh my gosh, my family, like where are, like he doesn't like I forget, like
the scene when they're out on the street in the rain looking at the rat traps, is a little ham-fisted. And it kind of feels like a first draft of that scene. Like, we're just gonna write this like really, I don't want to say pretentiously, but it's like very big.
Then he looked forward and
it's like, look, it starts when we decide, and then he walks away and goes, "Where are you going? With luck, forward." One, you have not done anything really in the film to like suggest some kind of like social like commentary. Also, in our theater, people laughed at that line. Like people went, like I think they meant for it to be. I think they took it as a joke.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's supposed to be a joke.
I think, like, I'm able
to... It's like trying to do things...
I'm able to accept it... Yeah, I agree with you. I'm able to accept it enough in the sense that I buy that Remy, like, pretentious, artistic guy that he is, would, like, say something like that, but the film doesn't
make a comment about it.
Yeah. I don't know why that scene is within the narrative.
I think it's Brad Bird having a scene like that and going, like, how can we justify this? Again, maybe we don't really know. Yeah. Most of the things are going to be like, oh, it's not Brad Bird's fault. You know what I mean? Like, it probably was just whatever the issue is. So it could have been Brad, but maybe he came up with that scene. I don't know. Yeah. But you know, it does feel a little out of place.
It does. But another thing that you brought up is the fact that Remy and Linguini aren't able to talk to each other. That could have been quite disastrous in its own right.
I quite like it.
It works very well, but like, my God, is that a tricky tightrope to walk in the sense that you have your main character who's in a speaking role who can't talk for extended periods of the film. And we love... Patton Oswalt does an excellent job.
Yeah, he does such a good job. I guess it was supposed to be Rob Schneider before.
Which is what we found out at the screening, to which someone in the audience said, well, at least he bounced back with Norm of the North. Which was quite funny. But Patton Oswalt... they said, like, he brings, like, a sort of passion to it, and, like, that's exactly the word I would use.
And the thing about, like, on paper, Remy could have easily have been, like, a Lightning McQueen type. Where it's like kind of like an asshole, where it's like he learns to not be an asshole or whatever.
Learns to not be a snob.
Learns to be a snob, right? And he's kind of written that way by Patton Oswalt.
But he's so earnest.
Patton Oswalt is really good at playing like a likable asshole. Yeah. Where it kind of works. Because Remy's kind of a jerk.
Kind of.
During the opening bits, he's like, oh, well, that's the plongeur.
Yeah, he's sort of pompous, but like...
Patton Oswalt does a really good pompous.
He's so in his own like world and so celebrating... that, and it's clear that it's not like he's like sort of trying to prop up himself as much as he is just like he's appreciating the work of others. He's like in love with this whole idea of Gusteau and what he's built. That and we root for that too. So it's not like he's absorbed within himself. He is absorbed within his own world, but it's not a world that he created. It's a world that he's sort of like peeping in on.
Yeah. I do like this comment it's making. Well, again, going back to what you were saying, how it is a very layered film.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that I haven't even thought of. Mm-hmm. It kind of challenges this idea of, like, maybe, in a slight way, this idea of fanaticism. Okay. And kind of, like
glorifying.
Glorifying something to the point where it's like, you've made it impenetrable to scrutiny. Mm. Where it's like, he's like, has this whole thing like, oh, Gusteau, and but like, it's really when you challenge those preconceived and with the other chefs and the sous chefs or whatever you call them in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Also, they're kind of like allegiance to we follow the recipe and not being willing to take those changes or make those changes or take those risks. And then it's really the person who brings them out of this slump. Yeah. Although I guess technically the restaurant closes down at the end.
Right.
Oh, another plot hole? Not a plot hole, but like, well, yes, it's a plot hole. Is so they're like, well, we had to let out the health inspector later. Well, they saw the other humans. Would those humans be, like, arrested and convicted of, like kidnapping people and, like, holding them against their will?
They would have just said, the rats were, like, attacking me, too, when I couldn't. And as soon as I was able to help, I helped. Yeah. And Antonigo would have stood by that, because he wanted to have some more Ratatouille. So he was like, oh, yeah. There, you know.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. This isn't a good or bad thing, just something interesting I realized. That the ratatouille they serve isn't like how traditional ratatouille is made. I guess it's a stew.
Right.
It's in a bowl and whatever. Whereas this is like he makes it look all fancy or whatever. Mm-hmm. Which is really cool. It brings this idea of like something that
it's
very...
It's a new spin.
Not only is it a new spin, but it's blending like potentially a pompous world and potentially a backwards world.
A peasant
combining
dish.
Them. Yeah, it's a peasant dish. And kind of combining them and showing how like just because it's a peasant dish, it can still be part of that world, of this, like high art world. Like Remy himself, exactly.
Very interesting.
But... yeah, let's kind of talk about some other things that don't work. Because there really are a lot. Okay. I think on paper the plot works.
Yeah.
It's I don't know.
Well, here's another thing that comes to mind, because you brought up the other Seths. We don't spend too much time with them. Which isn't, like... It's not necessarily, like, too much of a bad thing. But it is quite an interesting choice when Linguini sort of, like, admits that Remy is, like, you know, like, the chef and, like, asks, like, for help. It is really interesting that they all leave and they never come back. And I feel like
it's not like, oh, they leave. It's like they don't do the moment with Colette coming back.
Yeah.
But for all of them,
right.
They don't do that.
And I feel it could then sting maybe even a bit harder if, like, we invested some more time in them. But then also if they were gonna, like, I understand why they didn't, like, ingrain too much then time with. I think that's far less of a problematic note than what happens with Remy's family, because with Remy's family it is then such an afterthought, even though it's supposed to be like he's torn between both worlds in a sense, but like he's so clearly like already like committed to one and not even thinking about
why does the dad change his tune? Is because after they free him from the trunk he still goes back and he's like, why the hell are you going back? He's like, oh, because I'm a cook. So is he like impressed by his like willingness to go back, like even though he might die? Even though those stakes aren't really there.
Yeah, I don't
he's like, you got gut. I'm not talking about family. I'm talking about gut or something like that. Like
I'm talking about guts. Yeah.
And I'm like, so what is the guts?
So
like,
some sort of vague masculine appreciation of the. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little, you know, like are the stakes about life itself, like dying, or is it more like, will Anton Ego like the dish? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was a little confusing. Yeah, the rat family doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Emil is funny.
Emil is funny,
but like,
and they get some good moments out of it. But like, yeah, like for a drastic portion of the film, they're not even.
Part of me,
we don't even get like a scene like, oh, here's where they are and what they're doing. Like,
part of me almost wishes, like you would have to scale back the role of Emil to the point where maybe like it doesn't even exist, and not make his relationship with his father so contentious, because if it were, you have to like pay it off later.
Right.
I would almost wish after they have to evacuate that he never sees his family again.
Wow. Yeah.
Because that maybe would work better. I mean, unless you can think of a way to make it work. I mean, it's almost more interesting.
Like on paper, I would feel like that would be like too tragic, and it would like overwrite the rest of the. So he lost his family, and then he's going to cook. But he doesn't like address it at all once
until they come
back.
He doesn't really go like, I miss them. He misses them in the sewer.
Right.
But
and part of that
until he bumps into a meal, he's not like, oh, I really wish my family were here.
And part of that you could argue is because he can't speak very much when he is just with like amongst Linguini and everything.
Yeah, I guess.
But I don't know.
So there's a lot of challenges, and I like the fact that they can't communicate through words. Well, Linguini can talk to him. Mm-hmm. Which they mine a lot of great physical comedy out of that. Imagine the scene.
That's strangely involuntary.
But imagine that scene immediately after the montage of them learning how to cook. Imagine if they could speak to each other. It wouldn't be as funny, I think.
Oh, totally.
It's all through that physical, like when they knock the thing out the window in the car crash, and like we starts to lift up the blindfold, and Remy just like puts his hand down and covers it over.
Lou Romano really sells it too. Pixar animator.
He was the teacher in Incredibles, right?
Yes, he was. He was
like, he's a disruption.
This little rat is guilty. This little rat. There you go. Hey. He changes his point of view about rats.
And he's also in Monsters University.
Yes,
right?
as Squishy.
As Squishy, okay.
Squishy. And Peter Shawn then is Emil, who then also works at Pixar. So probably the biggest roles that they've afforded, or afforded.
I would say Linguini is like, if not a dual protagonist, like the most important secondary character. Not secondary, but like after what do you call this? A protagonist? You can have a deuteragonist. It's like, I forget the word, but it's like the prefix instead of PRO. It's like D.
Deuteragonist?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if that's what it means, but maybe it is what it means. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he has to then carry a lot of the dialogue of the film, and he has then this sort of like, he's not like overly wimpish. Like you could tell he's then sort of like pathetic and directionless, but there is a sort of likable quality to him, and I feel like there is. If you really then get into the character, I think it does become a problem once he does get like full of himself and it's really unwarranted. But
like unwarranted, not in like he's kind of going a little too far. It's like on a story level, like it's just unwarranted.
It's unwarranted, yeah. And like thankfully, like watching it again, like that didn't last as long as I feel like it lasts when I reflect on it. But so yeah, like it's not a huge problem, but yeah. Is there anything else that then you thought was like an issue within the film?
I don't know. I there's not too much wrong.
I think the romance with Colette really works well.
Yeah, I think that works really well.
Yeah.
I think I like all the characters. Yeah. Nothing seems too out of place. I don't know. I think maybe we just keep talking and we think of something that we didn't.
Sure.
Let's talk about the animation.
Oh yeah.
I would say this film I think is very transitional in the way Pixar started to make their films look.
Okay.
In the sense of this is like I think the last film. Like I think at this point they were like we can make like these movies look really good now.
Yeah.
Right. Because after this, it's not like there's giant technological breakthroughs. I feel there's nothing like there's kind of like little inches like the rendering gets a little bit better as opposed to like going from Toy Story 2 to Monsters Inc. It's like holy shit.
Yeah.
Like look at the hair on like there's not, so then I think this is the last film to kind of have that.
Okay.
It looks so beautiful.
Yeah.
It feels like I wouldn't say it feels like a painting because it doesn't look like a painting. It looks like a photo.
Yeah.
But in the sense of like
it feels like a painting.
Yeah, it feels like it doesn't look like a painting. It feels like a painting, and it's the perfect blend I think of photorealistic CGI rendering with a really animated cartoony feel. Another thing I like about Brad Bird's films is that Linguini looks like he was designed for 2D. He doesn't look like a realistic human being.
Yep.
Like exaggerated features. Colette looks like weird. Mm-hmm. Her like face is like it's just a weird looking thing, but it works. You know, for this. I would go as far as to say it's beautiful, both in the sense of like how real it looks and also just how the artistry of it. I think this might be one of their most beautiful films.
Oh, for sure.
If not their most beautiful, but I can see the arguments against it, so I'm not going to try to say that.
Particularly of note, I think, is the scene in which Remy first comes into Gusteau's, and the sense of scale and the camera work is absolutely phenomenal.
Again, talk about that camera work with Brad Bird with Incredibles, right? Like it feels like with the camera,
it captures like both the frenzy of the kitchen, but also this perspective of this little rodent scurrying around, and all like the various ways in which a kitchen would be horrifying. Yeah. And how many movies are there about like restaurant kitchens like that? Not too many.
Where we get an insight into that world, right? I've never seen it, but I guess like Chef.
Chef is very good.
But that's after this.
Yeah.
I don't know anything off the top of my head. Something like I'm sure there's kitchens in movies, but But to this extent where it's like a central part of it or whatever, you know, you have a lot of fun exploring that world, like the kitchen, like going back to the thing I'm saying, it was like I like how it's a very grounded reality. It's not like a grounded reality meets fantastical thing. Like it's just a grounded reality.
Oh, there is the 100-foot journey. That's 2014. You probably never heard of that.
I don't even. What even
yeah. It's just sort of like it has Helen Mirren. It's this like French village where like an Indian eatery is opened, and it gets into that world like somewhat, but. Yeah, no, Ratatouille really then.
The fact it's animated, you have a lot of freedom, and you can really show it in these cool ways and like zigzag through and all that stuff. But I love the animation. Like I mean, also in terms of like the way the characters like move and behave. Great. We're talking about this with the fact that how they can't talk. Great physical comedy.
Yes.
Particularly with obviously with Remy controlling Linguini. Like I think the audience died laughing when Linguini's asleep because he's hungover.
Yes.
From the night before, and he has the sunglasses on, and she's like, "So that's good that you got in, right?" And he makes like this Elvis kind of face, like this, like, "Huh?" Yeah. And the audience just died.
I also really love the "I can't cook, but you can," and Remy's like, that's really very.
He's like,
funny.
He's like, "Oh come on, don't be modest." That whole scene is so funny.
Yeah.
They
like the soup.
Yeah. And then the great editing and them soaked like.
Oh, fantastic!
They like the soup.
Yeah.
They like the soup. Great little moments in these things that feel very like just normal movie kind of like funny. It's funny, really, just like very truthful moments.
Yes.
You know, but still feel it's a beautiful marriage of realistic films, I think, and like an animated film, like this really interesting blend with it.
And you gotta love that 360 turn when he is then like first making the soup and then revealing Linguini. That's a camera move that in and of itself gets a huge rousing laughter. Yeah.
Because when you stop, it like jolts to a stop, and then you see Linguini's face, and he drops the blip and drops the rest of the ingredients.
Perfectly composed, like all visual through that.
Yeah.
Another thing, I guess, then touching upon the visuals, Brad Bird really loves diminutive human characters. Because in Incredibles, he had Gilbert Huff, and he had Edna Mode, and in this he has Skinner. And
like characters that like no human should be that short or something.
Like really the short human characters that move around like crazy, they're stepping on stools, like and they're going toe to toe with like way taller characters and such. I guess they're
usually more intimidating than the taller characters that are talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and the mode like owns the scene.
This sort of like electric quality, like very tightly packaged within like which I guess then sort of speaks to then how like Brad Bird then tries to like squeeze so much into all this. He like then squeezes into literally a small package of a human character, all of these emotions and eccentricities and just like an interesting choice that I feel like speaks to the sort of like obsessive like crazy.
So we're talking about we've kind of stopped talking about it because maybe it hasn't been as big of a thing.
Okay,
we kind of started our discussion about Pixar villains.
Oh, okay.
You know, I can't believe we completely forgot. We said when we first started talking about Pixar villains, we were talking about how Hopper was the only like really true like from the beginning. Well, no, and I guess that's still true.
I think we must have brought up Skinner. No,
I don't think we did. We kind of forgot about Skinner.
Did we?
So how do we do we like him as a character? And
I really like Skinner. He's very entertaining. I enjoy the interactions between him and his lawyer, and I like how even after losing his job, he's still obsessively remains a part of the narrative. But he's he's going way too far with this, and it's quite funny. I think, like, in a sense, of course, we have to then address that, like, Ego is in and of himself, like sort of a villain as well. But
he's like an antagonistic figure.
He's an antagonistic figure, but, like, Skinner is, like, a lot of fun. And I think mostly it's just sort of, like, it's like he's a villain, but, like, it operates in, like, arguably a different way than at least any other Pixar villain that we've seen up until now, in the sense that much of it there are points at which he isn't supposed to be, like, genuinely intimidating, like when he like traps Remy and such, and which, by the way, like really good choice to have that be like the last time we see the Gusteau apparition. Was like you never did, and then he's gone. It reminded me of how, like, how I say with Hunchback of Notre Dame, they should have gotten rid of the gargoyles once they have that scene, but then they bring them back and they're in the fight. That's like doing.
It'd be like if Gusteau was helping cook the meal at the end.
Oh God, yeah. No, that would be so bad.
It'd be like, why, so he can interact with this world now or something?
And it would completely, that would be awful. But yeah, what I was saying was just sort of like, a lot of it is like, we're sort of like poking fun at like seeing like, the lengths to which he'll go, and how like he'll think he sees the rat, and he's trying to show, he's showing it to me, and then he keeps popping up, that whole thing.
Ooh, it's over here.
It's over here. Yeah, it's hilarious because it's so like absurd. Like the like what he's then trying to like trace through, and of course we know that everything he's seeing is real, but like I feel like throughout much of it, it's just sort of a comedic advantage that it gives to the film, rather than like, oh, it's this antagonistic force, like, oh, it's really then going to cause trouble. So like sort of a different role for an antagonist, but one that really works, and one that makes the paper chase sequence just so delightful.
Yeah. Let's talk about Ego.
Ego, yes.
You have a lot of it.
Yes. So I think Anton Ego in many ways is the best character in this film.
With great performance by Peter O'Toole.
The late great Peter O'Toole.
Such a good actor in general.
Wonderful. That last and sort of then speech that he has, and like each time I watch it and really take it in, you sort of take away a new part of it. And it is quite interesting that he says that even when there's like sort of like a scathing criticism given of something that like even if it deserves it, arguably that thing presents more value than the criticism of it, which is then really then sort of interesting. There's so many things to then dive into. Of course, then mainly what it's discussing is this idea of how great art can come from anywhere, and his sort of epiphany when it comes to Gusteau. But also then it mixes in that he has he's forced to. It's like, is he going to then lose his credibility and such? But and it comes back to then this whole idea of like, when it really
gets into film criticism. Who thought we would have an allegory for film criticism? Right.
But like what's most difficult, or perhaps what gives the film critic the most value that they could have, is in their defense of the new, which is really, really interesting. And
not just the new, but the new that is most likely not going to be accepted because it's new, or because it's different.
Yes. Which, like,
because if it's new and everyone likes it, then who cares? But like it being like, this is a step forward.
Yeah.
For whatever this is, whether it be a film or a food or
new
whatever.
experimental, like sort of, and it is like in a way sort of like a meta-contextual evaluation of like the movie itself, but it is just also it's speaking to this larger statement about creative ambition and getting back at this idea of how it's not always just like about following the recipe. And of course, it ends. His very last words are "surprise me," So
I think it's the last. I think that's the last line of the movie, except for the dad. It's not quite
the dad,
but that doesn't count. I don't count that.
No, you don't count that
because that's more like not. That's not a line. That's more just like it's just more like over chat.
Yeah, that's the last proper line of the film. And a very appropriate one.
Because it's all about surprising. It's all about expectations.
It's all about surprise.
It's the same reason why I'm such a big fan of, well, not as much now, but why I'm such a big fan of the movie Mulan.
Okay, why
I like the idea of like the underdog having to.
I see what you're saying.
For no real reason. I identified a lot with the underdog when I was in high school, because when I was in high school, I was really trying to start getting into the writing and directing game.
Okay.
In like my theater program, but very young, like as a sophomore, which in my program was kind of like really early. Like you maybe would do as a junior. Definitely, if you were a senior, it was more likely. Yeah. So I got a lot of resistance, and that was when I was seeing all these movies again. Yeah. That's like when I had that surgery and was rewatching all these movies. So I identified with this idea of like rising above an expectation set by others for you. Mm-hmm. So that's why I really identified with Mulan and this, in the sense of surprising me. I think that's the thesis of the film.
Okay, yeah.
This idea of like you're gonna, which we'll get to with Monsters University.
Right.
You surprised me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I think that goes a lot to
Scrabble. Yeah.
I think that speaks a lot to the film. This idea of surprising. And also I think the movie surprises people because it on a lot of levels it shouldn't work.
Right.
So let's kind of talk about let's do something really specific you wanted to bring up. I want to talk about like this movie. It has a very good Rotten Tomatoes score. I think it's like 97 or something. It's very good, and people really like it. But I feel it's very divisive. Like, I've heard people say this is their absolute favorite Pixar film. The guy who introduced it tonight even said, like, I think it's my favorite.
It's my favorite Pixar.
And I've heard people say, like, it's the worst one.
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder why.
I wonder too many people say it's the worst. What I'll hear is, like, they'll just sort of, like, put it, like, closer to the bottom of their rankings, but for some people, they say it's their favorite. And I think why it's so divisive. Especially coming into film school, there are a lot of people who like put it at the top, and I guess it makes a lot of sense because it is sort of like
about
artistry. Yeah. So, but yeah.
So why do you think it's why do you think? Because we kind of talked at length about problems, and like, don't get us wrong here. You guys, like these problems I think are glaring. Like, I think these are like major problems with the film.
Sure.
But I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think the pros outweigh the cons by like a mile and a half.
No,
I wonder what it is about the film for other people that those outweigh the pros. Like, why do you think certain people like dislike it so much?
Well, I guess it also then speaks to the fact that, like, again, in a sort of similar way to The Incredibles, but even more so, there's not then too much in the way of material for kids, especially once we get away from sort of like the rats.
Which is why I like it so much.
Yeah, well, but like once we get away from the rats, the rat family, they're like you had like Emil would have been like very easy to like okay, kid appealing character, but then like we sort of have like like a kid then doesn't, even if they like doing art like like finger painting, they don't have like this sort of like passion for
or vocabulary to understand the idea of like artistry.
Yeah, and of course they can't really connect to him quite as much as they could some of the other Pixar heroes, nor could they Linguini or like really anyone who's then presented within the world of the film. So I think that's one thing.
You know what I think? I think Pixar maybe learned its lesson and realized, like with bugs, rats aren't going to be super cuddly. Uh-huh. So you can't make the focus about like this rat world, like with Bugs Life, how it's like no one wants a flip plushie.
Well, one thing that was interesting that they mentioned in the Q&A was that, and I guess this was part of like trying to make a rat like more like cuddly and accessible.
I think Remy's pretty cute.
They make him blue, and that people associate fantasy with blue, and that really helps him stick out in the kitchen. Well,
yes,
which is very very
between
important.
all the whites and
because he's so small. Like you really then need to be able to see him.
Yeah. I wonder if the people who don't like this haven't seen since they were kids, and because it's harder to like it as a kid.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it on TV when I was really like maybe a year after it came out. I saw clips of it on TV. I was like, I don't like this, and I turned it off, and I saw it. So I wonder if the people who are like adamant like Ratatouille's like meh.
I think
maybe
it's
hadn't seen it since they were kids.
Pardon the pun, but I do think it is something of an acquired taste in the sense that the more and more I revisit it, the more and more I like it.
Yeah.
Because then you're able, like, you know, like, I think there are, like, problems that, like, as you said, like, they're somewhat glaring when you first go through it. Like, just sort of, like when you think about, like, Pixar duos, when you think about Woody and Buzz and Mike and Sully, Marlon and Dory, and then you have Remy and Linguini. And it's like, okay, like, this isn't really then as strong of a, you know, like, sort of, like, connection, but, like, is it really then supposed to be? Is it then going for, like, are all of them these movies just, like, like, are their success, like, built on the success of how, like, strong, like, the core friendship is? I don't think that's necessarily the...
I think this film breaks a lot of the formula.
Yeah, it does.
You know, very much how, like, they brought Brad Bird in to kind of shake it up a little. Mm-hmm. I think this film shakes it up even more. Mm-hmm. In a way. Mm-hmm. In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder why people don't. If you dislike Ratatouille, please let us know. If you have big issues with it, let us know, because I'm very interested to hear.
It's long, it's atmospheric, yeah, like for kids, but also just some audience members who could not, might not get into it. They might think it's like boring, you know, like or just that there are like too many ideas like being like thrown into the mix that like don't. Right. Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
I keep coming up with these. I swear I'm not trying.
He's trying really hard. I can see him writing furiously.
No, I'm not.
But it's much more character driven, which makes it feel like a more European film.
Yeah.
It's not super important with the plot. I mean, there really is no plot.
Well, that's another thing. So, because we were talking about...
It's kind of things happening.
We were just talking about with Cars, how there's a lack of causality throughout it. So what exactly is... I guess, you know what, Skinner then kind of, like, allows for that to, like, sort of be there. In the sense that, like, we then find out that then Linguini might be Gusteau's son, and then he needs to then do a DNA test, and then he starts to become suspicious. That then has, like, an arc to it that some of the stuff with, like, Linguini, like, just sort of, like, kind of, like, low-key learning from Colette... It wouldn't necessarily have as much of a sense of progression without that. So I guess that sort of, like, subtly adds that to the film.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think the reason why maybe... I think it has to go back to it being character-driven, because it's, like, similarly in this film, like, with Cars, like, there's maybe potentially a lack of causality, mm-hmm. but unlike with Cars, the characters here have such strong motivations that it kind of doesn't matter. If I could be so bold.
And even if it is, like, it's in one location, it's not, unlike with Cars when it's about, like, slowing down the kitchen, it is a fast-paced place to
It's in one place, but it's like you get a lot out of that location. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love, completely off topic, it's about Ratatouille. I love the scene where she's teaching him how to cook.
Yeah.
With all the little things like the do everything I say or I will kill you.
Oh, I will kill you, yeah.
But also when she's
like the crackle of the bread.
The crackle of the bread is my favorite thing ever. I just love that. It's like not the look, but the sound, a symphony of crackle. Yeah. That's my favorite part.
It makes you want to have bread while you're watching.
Yeah, I want to have that soup. That soup looks so good.
Oh jeez.
I'm from Rhode Island. If you guys didn't know, I just craving like clam chowder the whole time. I was like, ugh, I just want, god damn it, I want to love it all. But anyway,
no one's gonna get that reference.
No one's gonna get that reference
to one of our films. But anyway.
Yeah,
no, it definitely, and that was a goal that they expressed during the Q&A, that they wanted to make people feel hungry when watching.
Well, that's a big step for CG animation.
But that helps the movie theater in that they sell concessions. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, they didn't say that. But,
okay.
No.
So I actually tried to give you the benefit and go, oh, okay. But now I know you're just a jokester.
Yeah. No, everything I've been saying is just a joke. No, so another thing that they brought up in the Q&A that I thought was interesting was because we're sort of then talking about the rat world and the human world and how they distinguish between them. The fact that they have Remy on his hind legs when interacting with humans and then he's on all fours when amongst the rats.
But it's an interesting touch.
Yeah. It's an interesting touch that I think helps sort of see the fragmentation of the character that also is inherent to the fact that he's able to speak amongst his kind and can't with Linguini.
Yeah.
So I guess that sort of kind of subtly lets the audience separate it and they're not thinking why isn't Remy talking throughout so much of the... Yeah, because it feels like two halves.
Yeah. But I will say I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
And not like, you never noticed it.
It's a subconscious thing.
No, I would disagree. I don't think it affected the way I view it. Not now I know it, now it makes sense why I thought... No, I didn't really notice it. It's a cool touch, but I don't think it influenced it. I was never thinking he's acting different. He seems like he's acting the same the whole time.
Well, you may not have noticed it, but your brain did.
No, but I don't think but your brain did. Yeah. Brain got approved. If you've seen the Pillow Talking music video, the little brain.
Okay, well, that wasn't what I was referencing. But anyway.
Bring out a poop still.
All right, well.
I'm thirsty as well.
Okay.
I could sure use a Sprite.
All right. So, back to Ratatouille.
Ratatata. Yeah.
Ratatouille. Yeah, you remember how they had the commercials that were trying to show you how to pronounce Ratatouille?
What a big risk.
Yeah.
Of naming a mainstream, like, I don't want to say blockbuster, but like back in 2007, a big deal. Yeah. One of the bigger movies of the summer. Naming something that people aren't going to know how to pronounce. What the cojones on the people who advertise.
But you had to call it Ratatouille. What else could you have called it? Remy's Kitchen. What are you going to, you know?
Remy goes to work.
Remy in Paris! Exclamation point. Yeah. Ratatouille. So the commercial will go, Ratatouille.
So I give him a lot of props.
Ratatouille.
Because I don't think a major studio would do that today. Yeah. I think they would have named it. Well, I mean, you have the great classic example of, instead of Basil Baker Street, they changed the name in Disney to Great Mouse Detective in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it wouldn't be the first time that they changed a great title for marketing purposes. Yeah. So I give them a lot of credit for sticking with that title.
The Great Mouse Chef.
The Great Rat Chef. He's not a mouse, he's a rat.
Oh, sorry.
They're very different. But is there anything else specific we want to talk about before we're starting to get to the end of the episode?
Okay.
Is there anything else specific we want to talk about before we get into rankings?
One thing that I think is important is to address the credits. Because you were saying how, and this goes for The Incredibles as well, which I don't think we mentioned, the fact that they're getting more into this sort of a stylistic, hand-drawn, even experimentation with the credits, which is really fun. Especially mixed with Giacchino's score.
Yeah.
Really, really lovely. It's sort of then happening more and more as of late that Nostalgia Critic did this editorial recently about how opening credits used to then sort of be an art unto themselves, but now that's sort of shifting into closing credits. I feel like that's been sort of an interesting thing.
And maybe it's because they're trying to find a way, even though it really doesn't matter. Maybe because they're trying to find a way to keep you in the theater.
Right.
Not because there's some kind of scene at the end, like a post-credit scene, but they just want you to
Yeah. Which he used The Incredibles as an example in the sense that a lot of it was recreations of scenes, so it's reminding you, that was awesome. Oh, this was a really great movie. With this though, it's interesting because it doesn't recreate anything or even follow-up events to the film like WALL-E does. It's just sort of here's rats in these comical scenarios having to do with food. So it's just lovely. Yeah. So, interesting sort of choice.
Because then we start to see more. Does Up do something like that, or no?
Up has a scrapbook style thing.
It's different. So they're starting to make choices for the credits.
Yes.
Whether it be a 2D thing or whatever.
Sure.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So shall we? So let me ask you this. So if we're gonna get to rankings.
Yeah.
I remember before we went into this.
Yeah.
I was like, where do you think Ratatouille is gonna fall on your list? And you said probably closer to the bottom. Not necessarily is that still true, but did you like this more than you thought you would watching it? I definitely,
as I said, each time I revisit it, I like it more. And I want you to give your rankings first.
My rankings first?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm really stressed about this because we're really starting to get really, it's like how you edge out, which one edges out, right?
Uh-huh.
My ranking as of right now is, maybe you should start recording my rankings so I can look at your screen while I do it.
Uh-huh.
I believe before this movie I said Bug's Life, Cars, Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., Incredibles.
Yes.
Oh, God. I feel like anything I say is going to be controversial. No matter what I say.
Oh, dear. And you're in a pretty bad position right about
now. Right now, it's right... I'll explain my process right now. It's at the worst... It's just below Toy Story 2, so better than Finding Nemo.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a question of, is it better than Toy Story 2, or is it better than Monsters, Inc., or is it better than The Incredibles? I don't think it's better than The Incredibles. So is it better than Monsters, Inc.? I think Monsters, Inc. is a more cohesive film, on one hand, but then with this film, I think the highs in this have more, thematic interest.
Yeah.
But, part of me has trouble saying, I don't have problems saying Monsters, Inc. I enjoy Monsters, Inc. more than Toy Story 2. But to put Ratatouille above Monsters, Inc. implies that I think Ratatouille is better than Toy Story 2. But I don't know. I really don't. Can we come back to me? Can we go to you?
What? That's not fair. No, you have to go first.
Oh, fudge. Okay.
All right. Because I'm torn as well.
But it's not. I don't know if is it as high as on my the stakes are bigger for me. I'm like
the stakes.
I'm talking about it being like in the top 4 here. Mm-hmm. I might regret this later, but I'm just gonna make a statement.
You could always retract.
No, there's no retracting.
Okay, never mind.
There's no retracting.
You can't.
No,
but because of your limits. You can't.
I think at the very end.
Oh, Jesus
I think at the very end of this process.
Yes.
We can do slight modifications. I the reason why I don't want retractions is because like if you be like, oh, I want to change them around, like you just do like what you feel right in the moment.
Okay.
Right. But that withstanding, I think I'm gonna go Bugs Life from bottom to top.
All right.
Bugs Life, Cars, Toy Story.
Okay.
Finding Nemo. Toy Story 2.
Oh.
Oh man, I don't know. Monster Inc. Ratatouille Incredibles.
Oh,
I did it. And here's why I'm gonna defend it.
Oh god.
And here's why. I'm not even sure if I completely agree with my choice, but if I have to make a choice,
okay.
I think the reason why Monsters Inc. went above of Toy Story 2 is that, Toy Story 2 has a lot more interesting thematic elements, but Monsters Inc. was like so expertly crafted in its emotions. It's a little lacking on theme. Mm-hmm. But it's so well crafted in its emotions and its characters and its comedy that it edged out Toy Story 2. So then it becomes, okay, so Ratatouille, is it better or worse than Monsters Inc.? Is the question.
Yeah.
It's not better than Incredibles, so let's see on with this.
Right.
And I think this edges out despite it having more flaws. I think I'm so attracted to the all the layers that we talked about. Like we talked about all those depth and layers for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
They're so fascinating.
They are so fascinating.
That I think it slightly edges out. And even with its flaws, I still find myself wanting to come back to watch Ratatouille. I watched it probably a year ago, actually, around this time. The last time I watched it, I think, was about a year ago.
Oh, yeah, it was, because it was in September.
Yep, it was around September. I remember we watched it.
Yeah.
Or at least part of it. I know, like, Harvey and Kate were here. So, it's not like it's been forever. The way Monsters Inc. I hadn't seen in forever, so maybe that was part of the reason why I liked it so much. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's been forever.
Right.
I'm not 100% on my decision here, but like I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna commit to it.
Okay.
I feel strongly enough about it that I think that's so my top 5 right now from Incredibles, Ratatouille, Monsters Inc., Toy Story 2, and Finding Nemo is what I said.
I think so. Yeah.
Whew, man, very controversial for me.
Off. Okay. So to remind everybody, my rankings were it was A Bug's Life, Cars, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Toy Story 2. And I too found myself very, very torn with this film. More so than I have with any of the Pixar films.
Because usually they're either really good, clearly really good, or clearly like meh. Whereas this is like...
This is really tough to classify. I think that's because, like, as you said, that there are very, very high highs, and there's some stuff that sort of blatantly doesn't work. So... For me, it sort of came down to a dance between it and Monsters Inc.
Okay.
And I was really then trying to think, because, like, as a child, I definitely would have put Monsters Inc. above. And I really then, like, have been doing, like, some soul-searching about, like, okay, like, Monsters Inc., I think that, like, it's structurally then sort of sound. Although I do think, like, Monsters Inc. then also then carries with it its own sort of, like, set of problems in the sense that I like some of like the villain work is like a little bit like I like both like overdone and underdone at the same time, and that there's two and yet neither of them are like quite fleshed out all that much. Again, relatively speaking, like I can't stress enough how much I love all these films. And also the fact that with Monsters Inc. I feel like there's a bit less of an emphasis on like emotion, like of course we have like the great like sort of resolution with Boo, but like throughout like it's more than just like about like the comedy and the sort of like vaudevillian like nature of it, which is great and very charming. But Ratatouille does get at a really sort of then atmospheric and alluring kind of then like sense of like immersion that really then pulls you in and makes you feel for Remy and root for him. But of course it does also then carry with it its problems, and that it is like trying to do maybe like too many different things, and that there are certain then characters in it that then don't work, and there's oh boy, I'm thinking about it. It's a very tough choice.
It's tough because you have like, it's like some of the things don't work, but like they're trying. To make it worse, Monster Inc. isn't trying to do anything
right.
Like grand in a thematic sense, where where here it's trying to do a lot of different thematic things, and some of it doesn't work, but the ones that do work is like some of the best. So I think I think it comes down to split-second decision. It's hard because we just watched them like the other day, but I mean we both saw them very recently, so it shouldn't be too much of a difference. I think right now they're tied. Basically, all the reasons you gave, they're tied. Which one would you rather pop in?
Which one would I rather pop in right now? But I just watched Ratatouille today.
But I mean, I know it's hard because we just watched it today, but we just watched Monster Inc. only like a week ago. My point being, for those of you, also, we're releasing these one day after another, but we're recording these beforehand, so it's not like we're watching them the day we upload them. These reviews. But my point being is, like, which movie would you rather, like, do you see yourself being more interested? Like, tomorrow, if I was like, Brian, let's watch a Pixar movie, let's watch either Ratatouille or Monsters, Inc. Friday afternoon. Which one would you rather just pop in?
I'm Ratatouille.
Ratatouille.
And that's a violent answer. And I'll tell you why. I'll get into a little bit why. Because I feel like because
the film was so dirty, I need to see a digital version of it.
Well, okay, that's part of it. No, but the fact that they're just like stronger choices in the end of the day, just barely. In the sense, I'm thinking of stuff about how like then Mike and his relationship with Celia, or the rivalry with Randall, or like thinking about those sort of things. And those are just sort of things like casually like, okay, yeah, they're part of like this narrative. Whereas with Ratatouille, I feel like, for better or worse, like each of these elements are really then being like put out there, and they're trying to flesh them out as much as they can, even if they don't all have the time that maybe like would like they warrant in order to like really like fully exploit the potential of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. I mean, those are the reasons I think I put it above Monsters Inc. as well.
Yeah.
Which was tough. Yours isn't as controversial because I'm also saying it's better than all the other ones.
Oh, which is like, that's an abomination. But yeah, like I have never put Ratatouille above Monsters Inc. before when trying to do. But like I feel like just something. And I think really then the strength of those themes and how much then I think they very much speak to me like at this stage of my life. But I think it speaks to anyone who has an interest in like whether it is just creating or just being like passionate about something, and sharing that with the world.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. So very hard decisions on both ends here, but I think we placed them true to ourselves. I don't think they're bad picks.
I really wrestled with myself.
He was really sweaty. He was rolling around on the floor wrestling with himself.
So,
is there anything else we need to say about enough said?
There's nothing left in me.
All right. Well, good, because this has gone on long enough. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Our next episode will be about Pixar's 9th theatrically released film, The WALL-E. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.